The high school preview show presented by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and as always, I'm joined by my partners, Tyler Amaral and Mukala Kabongo. Gentlemen, how are you on this chilly Wednesday evening?
I'm great. How you doing? Watching the Red
Hanging in there.
Sox.
Yeah.
Doing great. It's the best time of the year on the sports calendar.
Yeah, October is. I've always said that. I think the two best sports months of the year in many ways are October and February because February you got the Super Bowl, the start of the baseball season. You got hockey, basketball's going on, college basketball starting to heat up as you get closer to March Madness. And then October is great because you got NFL football, playoff baseball, and the NHL and NBA starting off. So we got plenty going on. And of course, our focus is high school football. And before we get into the conversation, I do want to remind you that if you're a head coach out there looking for a fundraiser for your program and you need something that fits your program and your community, well, Gold Athletics probably has that fundraiser for you. Matt Ross and his team are the best in the business when it comes to helping athletic programs and athletic departments raise money. Visit goldathletics.com for more information, and he and his team will put you on the road to making money in no time. Again, you winter coaches out there, you spring coaches, if you need that fundraiser to make that extra money ahead of your season, Gold Athletics is the place to go to find that fundraiser. Again, visit goldathletics.com today for more information. All right, gentlemen, week 4 was really good, right? I think you guys would agree. Lots of good games, some intriguing games. Mukala, you were one of the best games of the weekend. Central Catholic, Bishop Hendricken. Central Catholic comes back. We're going to start the Massachusetts portion of our preview off with Central Catholic. They're going to be hosting Xaverian this week. No rest for the weary. Big 20-19 come from behind win for John Sexton's squad. And Mukala, I'm going to start with you. Does Central Catholic have enough to compete with this Xaverian team?
I'm not sure if they have enough. If they want to beat Xaverian, they can't get off to the slow start that they did against Hendricken. I think Hendricken, they sacked Caden Smith 4 times in the game. They picked them off twice. They picked them off once. They forced 2 total turnovers. And throughout that first half, it was just the offense really couldn't get going. Caden Chase was having a hard time running the ball until late in that first half where they made the push and got a score right before the half. But they found something. They found something after that, going into the second half. But if they want to beat Xaverian, they can't start the way they started this past Saturday. Xaverian, we know how explosive their offense is and how fast they could put up points. So you don't want to fall behind 2 scores on Xaverian. So it's homecoming for Central Catholic. I still believe this is a really very, very good football team. They need a signature win. I think that'll be great for their program under Coach Sexton if they could get one of these games. If they could get this game for a signature win under his helm. So I want to say Central, but I think Xaverian will just have too much for them. But I think it'll be another one of those games. They'll be in it throughout, though.
I've said this I think every week, but Central Catholic had the hardest schedule in New England this year, at least on the non-league portion. We talk about Xaverian, St. John's Prep, BC High, Bishop Hendricken, Archbishop Stepanek, absolutely loaded schedule. They're 2-2 right now. And that's probably what most people would have expected going into the season, that they'd be 2-2 going into this final game. They're good, or Central Catholic's good, and they're better than they have been in recent years. I think they have a lot of firepower. I think Xaverian's just too well-rounded, though. I think Xaverian's a better team. And Xaverian, this is a team that's going to be hungry. They blew an 11-point lead last week to Springfield Central on their home field and got tripped up. They're still the 2-time reigning Division I champions. I don't think we're going to see this team lose 2 games in a row. Will Wood and company are going to be hungry. They're going to put up a lot of points. Xaverian wins this one.
All right, next up we've got a pretty intriguing Hockomock League, Bay State League matchup here. One of the best games of the weekend in Massachusetts. King Philip at Natick. Both teams undefeated going into this one. King Philip has been in some battles here. North Attleboro a couple weeks ago. Foxborough last week down 12-0 at the half. Had to come from behind to win 15-12. Natick has been really impressive thus far. Some people will say their schedule hasn't been as good as KP's, but they had a nice win last week against a good Milford team out of the Hockomock League. Tyler, I'm going to start with you. This should be a pretty physical game, your quintessential fist fight in a phone booth. How do you see this one playing out, and who do you like ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, I think last week I was at the King Philip Foxborough game, and I think that win said a lot about KP because oftentimes over the last few years, KP's been up, 28-0 at halftime or 21-0 at halftime, and they kind of pull away from teams in the second half. And that wasn't the case. They had to scratch and claw for that win, down 12-0 at halftime. One of the more physical games I've been to in a while. And they really dug deep and they were able to pull that off. So I think it's just, a testament to the kids, their mental toughness, and the coaching staff that they have there at KP. So they're a tough program. They're not going to lay down against anyone. Natick, though, I think Natick could be that public school that kind of emerges. I think we just kind of naturally pencil in 3 or 4 Catholic schools plus Springfield Central to be the teams in the mix. But last year we saw Needham. I think this year we see Natick kind of creep into that mix. Very good team. Looks like they made some adjustments at halftime last week against Milford. Started running the ball with Jack Showstead and James Mortarelli. They ran for over 300 yards as a team last week. This Natick team's really impressive. I think this is going to be like the ultimate slugfest, play out similarly to KP versus Foxborough last week. I don't think KP gets this one done, though. I like Natick 17-14, but it should be a hell of a game.
You would say these two teams are kind of like mirror images of each other in the way they play the game with the physicality and the running game. So it's going to be one of those. It's going to be one of those games. It's not, the clock's going to be moving. So because of each team's running game, but in this type of situation, I think I'm gonna go with King Philip in this one just because I think they're kind of in a groove right now, especially after that win last week, and they're kind of October is when teams usually start hitting their stride and want to, position themselves well later on down the season. So I think this is going to be a close one. I'm going with the same score as Tyler, but I'm going to go with King Philip.
All right. And speaking of Milford has a tough one this week. You talk about tough schedules. Milford plays a pretty tough schedule. They got a big one this week as they hit the Cape to take on a very good Barnstable team coming off a big win over Amherst Pelham. And Tyler, I'm going to start with you. When you look at this matchup, Barnstable in some ways, I don't want to say that they're a forgotten team in Division III, but I think a lot of people forget that they ended up dropping down to D3 this offseason. I don't think people are going to forget them, though, after this week. I think this has the makings to be one of the best games of the weekend in Massachusetts. And we're going to find out a lot about this Milford team. Do they bounce back after that 28-6 loss to Natick? A lot of young talent there. They're young, but they have a stiff test ahead of them against a very good Barnstable team.
Every week, I think there's 1 or 2 games that stand out as like true pick'ems, true toss-ups that I really struggle to pick. This is one of those games this week. Barnstable really hasn't been tested to this point. They've blown out Minneshaug, Amherst, Pelham, and Brockton. So this will be by far their toughest challenge to date. Milford's definitely played the more challenging schedule of the two teams, beat Leominster, beat Wellesley, beat Westfield before falling to Natick. So they've played 4 very good teams. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think Jason Dyer, you talk about Barnstable kind of flying under the radar. Jason Dyer is a running back that flies under the radar. They haven't really needed him to put up gaudy stats to this point in the first 3 wins. I think they're going to lean on him a little bit more this week. I lean Barnstable again. I think it's a true pick 'em, 24-21, something in that range. But this Barnstable team is really good. Jason Dyer, again, terrific back. Hassat Armstrong, one of the better two-way linemen in the state.
Yeah, Milford, after that loss last week, they're going to look to bounce back. But I think, I'm factoring in the travel to Barnstable. That's probably going to take a toll, and that might lead to a slow start for Milford and a fast start for Barnstable. I mean, Barnstable, as you said, very talented team, a lot of weapons on there. I think this is one of those games. I think Barnstable. I'm gonna go with Barnstable in this one because I'm factoring in the travel for Milford and then just like that a little bit of a hangover from last week.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Tyler, I mean, a back like Dyer, if he gets going early, they can take charge of this game. And this is a statement game for Barnstable. They need to prove that they should be someone who should be in the conversation in Division III. Again, I feel like, and I think you bring up a good point, part of it is their schedule. I feel like they're being left out, but I do think that they're somebody that people should focus on in Division III. So much of the conversation is about King Philip and Milton and Mansfield and Milford and Marshfield, but Barnstable's right there with those teams. All right, next up we've got a Catholic showdown here with BC High visiting Bishop Feion. Fiend, of course, coming off a big 21-7 win over St. Mary's last week, kind of sort of getting that monkey off their back, if you will. St. Mary's has been their bugaboo in recent years. BC High picks up a win over Everett. Mukala, I believe you were at that game, correct?
Yes, I
So I'm going to have you start us off here. Thoughts on this one? BC High starting to play better after a slow start. Talking about two teams that are physical, that want to run the football. This is going to be that type of game.
Yeah, BC High went back to their identity, as Coach Koskis said. They went back to physical football. They limited all their mistakes that they made in the first two games that cost them. And Noah Federico and Elijah Donaldson really had a day on the ground against Everett, over 213 yards combined. Both backs went over 100 yards. And despite them starting the season 0-2, their defense was played really well in the first two games, creating turnovers, getting to the quarterback. They did the same against Everett. Everett's first offensive series, they got a turnover. Mike Conley picked off the Everett quarterback, and after that, Everett really couldn't get anything going besides one drive. And then to end the half, they marched right down the field, did BC High, to get a score right before the half. So they went back to their identity in running the football, relying on that offensive line. And I think they got the momentum going into this one. It's going to be a tough one against Faheen, who looked really good against St. Mary's. That defense played outstanding, limiting the Spartans to only 7 points in that game. They got the plays, they got the big plays that they needed, and they got the scores when they needed to. So, but I think BC High went back to their identity, and I think it's going to carry over to this game Saturday against Faheen. I think a one-score game, 21-14.
Yeah, this should be a good one. I think both teams are sort of searching for a signature win here. BC High, they were, lost that tough one to LaSalle, and then were lost by 21 to Central Catholic. But Mukala, you mentioned the running game that they got going last week with Federico and Donaldson. I think that will continue as well. I think Fiend's a very good team. I just can't pick them against like the top teams in the Catholic Conference. We already saw them lose to Xaverian this year. I think this is going to be a pretty close affair. 21-14, 24-20, something like that in that area. Probably a one-score game. I lean BC High, though, but I think Bishop Fiend has played pretty well since that season opening loss to Xaverian. Running back Xavier Baker's really emerged as one of the better running backs around. So I think Fiend's going to, again, I think they're going to be a team that's in the mix here in Division II. They really beefed up that schedule this year. That'll pay dividends once they get to the Division II playoffs, but I like BC High here by a touchdown.
Yeah, and I think for Fiend, it's going to give them an opportunity to see how they could potentially stack up against CM down the road. They didn't fare well against Xaverian. I agree with you guys. I think this will be a closer game. If they can win this one, then I think it will be very telling in terms of how they could potentially stack up with arguably the best team in the Catholic Conference and Catholic Memorial down the road if they get there. But nonetheless, a true test for Brian Pinnabell's Shamrocks. They'll rise to the occasion. It'll be interesting to see who can set that physical tone along the offensive line early. All right, for our next matchup, we go out to Central Mass, and we have Leominster at Wachusett. Osiris Lopez and company looking to get back on track here after a tough loss a couple weeks ago. Wachusett, typical Wachusett. They're playing really good football, flying under the radar. This should be a really good matchup between two teams that can score points, get strong quarterback play. But typically games like this that are quarterback-driven games come down to other elements of the game. And I think this is a game that's going to come down to line play and who can control the line of scrimmage. Tyler, I'm going to start with you. How do you see this one playing out and what could be a really intriguing matchup?
I think it is an intriguing matchup, and I think I mentioned in the preview that this is the two best large schools in Central Mass. There are some good smaller schools, but Leominster and Wachusett are both going to be in the Division I playoffs. They're both very good, led by their quarterbacks, Lopez and Anderson. I think a lot of points will be scored, but I think at this point in time, I think Wachusett's the more well-rounded team. We've seen in the past that Wachusett is a tough place to play. I think the Mountaineers pull this one off in what might be considered a mini upset here, but I like Wachusett 28-21.
Yeah, this was one of those games that was circled on the calendar for a lot of folks. Wachusett, good start to the season. Leominster, their defense played a little bit better after that loss to Milford. Against Doherty, they played really well. They had some time off to prepare for this game. But I think Wachusett at home, I think they're just gonna make a little bit more plays than Leominster in this one, and they're gonna come out with another one-score game. It's gonna be a one-score game. Give me 35-28. Wachusett.
All right, next up, we're going to come back east, and we're going to go to the MVC when we have a big early season showdown between Methuen at Andover. Should be a fun game. These two teams, the last few years, have been explosive offensively. They can score a lot of points. Typically, games like this will come down to stops in the fourth quarter, and whichever defense can get that one or two key stops down the stretch. Mukala, I'm going to start with you. Methuen, of course, has been on quite a run here in recent years. Right. Andover, first-year head coach Jay Fielding. It's done a really good job so far with the Warriors, kind of putting his fingerprints on this program and what he wants them to become. This is going to be a really good test for both teams, no matter which way you look at it.
Yeah, right now, Andover undefeated on the season. They were coming off some big offensive performance. I believe they put up 41 again against Haverhill this past week. And Methuen, although they lost to Tewksbury, they had to bye last week, trying to bounce back. I saw Coach Fielding actually at the Central Bishop Hendricken game, and he likes the way his team's playing, but he feels like they definitely have a lot of room for improvement in how they play. But this is an exciting one in the Merrimack Valley, but because both of these teams can go up and down, very creative offensively. But I think the experience is going to be a little bit more on Andover's side. I think they got a little bit more experience than Methuen at this point. A lot of newcomers, new guys on the varsity side for Methuen. But I'm going to go with Andover. It's going to be a close one, but I think Andover in the second half will pull away.
Earlier, I mentioned Natick as a team, a public school team that could make some noise in Division I. I think Andover is another one of those teams. 3-0 under head coach, first-year head coach Jay Fielding. Beat Wellesley on the road, and then they beat a good Chelmsford team 41-3. Beat Haverhill 49-0 last week. First-year starting quarterback Kyle Olson's really emerged, and then Marcus DeJesus added a little bit of a different sort of element as a breakaway threat last week against Haverhill. So if the Golden Warriors are going to get that offense to complement the defense, they're going to be a really tough out. I think they win this one by a couple
scores. It should be a really good game, and as I mentioned, it should be a high-scoring affair. Okay, we're going to come south to the Bay State League next, and we have a battle of two undefeated teams. Mike Donovan's Weymouth Wildcats are 3-0. They traveled to Milton to take on Steve Dombowski's Milton Wildcats in a battle of the Wildcats. The other thing that's going to be intriguing about this matchup, fellas, is the contrast in styles offensively. Weymouth running an old-school single wing offense. Milton, of course, running Dombowski's patented spread offense. Tyler, I'm going to start with you. It's a contrast in styles, and I think stylistically, these teams are going to want to play two different games. I think Weymouth is going to want to run the football, control the clock, and play keep away. Milton's going to want to open this thing up and turn it into a track meet. How do you see this one playing out?
So I was at this game last year. It was fun. Weymouth won the game. It was at Weymouth last year. It was the first time in like 10 years they had beaten Milton, so it was a big win for the program. Kind of showed people that they arrived and Weymouth football was back. They're again another team that's going to be in the D1 playoffs here. They run that single wing, and it's tough to defend. You don't see that much nowadays. Tyler Munchback, Amari Gomes in the backfield. I think they complement each other well. Again, contrasting styles often make for the best games to view. So if you're a fan, you definitely want to check this one out. I think it's going to be back and forth. I think it's going to be high scoring, but the way they do it is much differently. Weymouth will probably beat you with more, methodical drives, chewing some clock, and then Milton has that quick strike ability with Patrick Collins at quarterback, and then all-state level receiver Ronan Salmon. It's going to be a really fun game. I lean Milton here, 34-26, something in that vicinity, but I really like what Milton's doing this year. They had a tough year last year by their standards, but Steve Dombowski's really got that team firing on all cylinders right now. Weymouth hasn't been in a competitive game yet. The schedule just hasn't been what Milton's has been to this point. So I think that's going to play a factor here too, especially if it's a close game. I like Milton.
Yeah, Weymouth looking for that signature win. It's going to be a tough environment out there in Milton, especially against that spread offense of Dombowski. But Weymouth, one thing they do one thing to neutralize an offense, a quick strike offense like that, is to keep them off the field. And with their single wing offense, that they're going to methodically, as Tyler said, move it down the field. So if they could find ways to keep that offense off the field and chew up a lot of clock and wear out Milton's defense, that'll be the way they win it. I think Wayman's going to pull this one off. I think they're looking for that signature win. I think this is going to be that right here.
All right, next up, we go down to the Patriot League, where Scituate travels to Plymouth South in what could be kind of a sneaky tough game for Herb Devine's team here. Scituate has been very good to start this season, very impressive. Johnny Donovan, Grayson Foley, a plethora of young skilled players, good up front. They've had some battles. Of course, the opener against Westerly comes to mind. Plymouth South is a program, though, that has been in the mix in the Patriot League the last few years. This will be another one of those games for Scituate where you've got to get off to a good start and play well early, because if you don't, you could find yourself in another game like they have a couple of times this year. Tyler, I'm going to start with you here. How do you see this one shaking out?
Yeah, I think this side of the Patriot. I honestly forget what the sides are called here. This is the Fisher. Yeah, this is the Fisher. So the Fisher, Scituate, Hanover, Plymouth South. Those three teams compete against each other every year, and are often, most times one of those teams is the one that comes out victorious and is conference champion. That's going to be the case again this year. Plymouth South lost close to Bridgewater Raynham. It's a little bit different. Or they have a little bit of a different element at quarterback than they usually have. They're usually a run-heavy program, and that's still true. They're still run-heavy, but Tim DeRocha really has the ability to beat you with his arm as well as a dual-threat quarterback. So I think Plymouth South has the ability to keep this one close for a half, but I think Johnny Donovan, Grayson Foley, Miller Shea at receiver, he's really emerged as Donovan's number one target. They're just going to be too tough to slow down. I don't think Plymouth South is going to really be able to stop this team, stop Scituate when they need to. Again, maybe close for a half, but Scituate pulls away in the second half.
Yeah, I agree with Tyler. I think this one is going to be Scituate. I just think there's too much firepower offensively. Even though I do like this Plymouth South team, I feel like they have some guys in there that can make plays for them. I think they'll keep it entertaining for a bit. I think it'll be a little back and forth early on, but I think Scituate's talent is just going to overwhelm Plymouth South, and I think they're going to win this one probably by 2 scores.
All right, you are watching the High School Preview Show presented by Gold Athletics. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by Tyler Amaral and Mukala Kabongo. Coaches, I just want to remind you that if you're looking for a fundraiser that can generate some legitimate revenue for you, and it is a fun fundraiser for your players and it fits your community, then visit goldathletics.com today. Matt Ross and his team have a variety of fundraisers that can help you raise money. So for you winter and spring coaches out there that are kind of up against it here, this is fundraising season for you. If you don't have one now and you need some cash in the kettle to help your program out, you might want to go over to goldathletics.com. Like I said, Matt Ross and his team have a variety of fundraisers that could help you raise money. So if you want to make that money, then you better go over to goldathletics.com today. We're going to stay in the Patriot League with our next matchup, but at the beginning of the year, this was one of the more intriguing interstate matchups. I was looking forward to this. I thought this was a game that potentially could showcase one of the best teams in Massachusetts versus one of the best teams in New Hampshire. Londonderry at Duxbury, of course, you're going to be there for us on Saturday, Tyler, for this one. And unfortunately, Jimmy Lazon's Lancers not off to a great start. 1-3 lost to rival Pinkerton last week, 24-10. But nonetheless, this is a well-coached program. And if Duxbury doesn't come to play and they're sluggish in any way, they're going to find themselves in a game. This Londonderry team is not afraid to play people. They came down and beat Chelmsford last year. They hung with Bishop Hendricken 3 years ago. They can play with teams out of state. They have proven that. This is going to be a good test for Duxbury despite Londonderry's record.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know the last time Londonderry lost 3 games. I mean, maybe it was recently. It just doesn't seem like they lose 3 games in a row very often. One of the best programs in New England. So I think they're going to give Duxbury all they can handle, regardless of the record. They've played 3 good teams in New Hampshire that they've lost to. It's not like they're losing to bad schools if they don't have talent at Londonderry this year. They're talented. They're well coached. They're a good program, proud program with good tradition. They'll be able to keep this one close. We've been saying this all year. Duxbury lost a ton. They've been at Gillette seemingly every year for the last 8 years or whatever it's been, and they'll figure it out and they'll be in contention in November again and they'll make a run. It was just going to take a while to get up to speed and start firing on all cylinders, like previous Duxbury teams have. I think Ian McNeil in the backfield, along with quarterback Brady Ryan Smith, I think they're really going to have a good game on Saturday afternoon. That'll be the difference. They pull this one out 27-21.
Yeah, it's October, and I think Duxbury is gonna start hitting their stride and getting in the groove right now. I think they're gonna, just out physical Londonderry in this one, and they'll pull this one out. I think this is when we usually see Duxbury start playing their best football. So I'm gonna go with Duxbury in this one.
All right, we go back to the North Shore for this next one, and it's an intriguing smaller school matchup here between Shawsheen and St. Mary's. Shawsheen coming off a 27-0 win at Norwood last week. As I mentioned earlier, St. Mary's losing to Bishop Feehan last week in what has become a rivalry game for the Spartans. Spartans will look to bounce back, but it'll be tough against the Rams team, who I think at the beginning of the year, based on what they lost, especially quarterback Sid Tilsley, I think a lot of us thought, okay, how good is Al Constabile's team? Are they going to be able to replicate what they did last year, which was an undefeated season and a Division V Super Bowl title? I can't say whether or not they can do that again, but man, this is a good football team. And I think that, I don't want to say they're surprising people, but I think that they're better than I think people thought they were going to be coming into the season. Because again, if you looked at it objectively, they lost a lot. Mukala, I'm going to start with you. Some thoughts on this one. I mean, this will be a tough test for Shawsheen, but this Shawsheen team thus far has proven to be up to the challenge.
Yeah, and you said it correctly. I think they're catching some people by surprise on how good they are so far to start this season. I mean, they've got some really good wins. When you have a turnover the way they did, usually there's some lumps, but it seems like the ship just keeps on rolling with them, and they look really good. They look really good on both sides of the ball, and the Spartans. They've dropped their last 2 games. They didn't look good against Bishop Feehan. Their offense wasn't there. They couldn't really do much. So they need to win themselves. Usually when it's a Lynn team, I don't go against them, but I think Shawsheen is going to come down and get this one.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the Brian Tilsley, Sid and James' dad, defensive coordinator. He's sending me some emails, and we've been going back and forth about how this team, second longest winning streak in the state after Uxbridge, haven't lost since 2023, haven't lost a home game since 2021. Just a suffocating defense once again, led by linebacker James Tilsley. He's an all-state level caliber linebacker, in addition to being an all-region wrestler. They got Jake Banda in the backfield. He's a guy that could run for 100 yards, a couple touchdowns any given week. Dylan Pratt at receiver, kind of a game-breaking threat. The Shawsheen team's really good. I think it's going to come down to them in Foxborough again in Division 5 at the end of the day. Don't be surprised at all if this team's at Gillette for the 3rd time in 4 years. It's a terrific program, and what Al Costabile has been able to do at a tech school is just incredible. Shawsheen, again, one of the top defenses in the state. They're gonna St. Mary's is gonna have a tough time here, moving the ball, scoring against Shawsheen. I think Shawsheen just wears teams down too, especially at that level. They play more physically than most teams. I think maybe St. Mary's can keep it tough, keep it close for a half, but Shawsheen ultimately wins by a couple scores.
All right,
here.
Staying with Division 5, the next matchup is a pretty intriguing one. Archbishop Williams, who's kind of come out of nowhere in a sense. They've looked pretty good so far, undefeated through the early portion of the season. They travel up to take on Bishop Fenwick. They travel up to Peabody to take on Bishop Fenwick. Of course, the Bishops coming off a big win last week at Ashland against a good Ashland team. Hudson Garrity and company have been impressive so far. Of course, this is a young team. You got Garrity. got Ethan O'Connell, you got Zay Wiggum, the CM transfer. This football team is loaded with talent, and I do think people are starting to take notice with what's happening in Braintree, and I think a lot of people are starting to believe that potentially this team could be a player in Division 5. Tyler, I'm going to start with you. Despite that being the notion, they're going to have their hands full with a Fenwick program that traditionally has been pretty good through the years.
Yeah, I mean, Hudson Garrity gets all the or a lot of the attention, and deservedly so. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the country in his class. But Ethan O'Connell, eighth grade running back, is really making waves here for this team. He's had multiple 100-yard rushing games, so he's
a
nice,
Rentham young man. We were looking forward to coaching him.
A Rentham guy.
He left us.
Yeah. What are the Chiefs in Pop Warner? Is that there?
Chiefs? Yes. Yeah.
He was a former Chief.
Yep.
Former Chief. But he's putting together a terrific season. Zay Wiggum, you mentioned, he's a nice receiver for Archies as well. Fenwick's lost some close games. They lost to a good Marblehead team to start the year. They lost to a good Gloucester team by 1 last year. I think they're going to be a player in Division 6. I really do, regardless of the 1 and 2 start. I think they're going to pull this one out by a touchdown, but I think this is another one of those games that really could go either way. Archbishop Williams, to me, this is their biggest test of the year. Ashland was a good test last week, but I think Fenwick's slightly better than Ashland. This is another road game for Archie, so we'll see. I think a lot of people will start to drink the Kool-Aid if they pull this one off, but I got the Crusaders here by a score.
Yeah, Archbishop Williams, they had a late rally against Gloucester last week that just fell short. They lost by 1 point in that one. I think they went for 2. I think they went for the game winning.
You mean
2-point
Fenwick?
Conversion. Yeah, I'm sorry, Fenwick. My bad, Fenwick. Yeah, I think they went for the game winning 2-point conversion against Gloucester, and they didn't convert it in the 34-33 loss. But they had some explosive plays offensively in that one. So I think with some of these early season losses, they're gonna try to get back on the right track. I mean, Hudson Garrity and those boys coming in is not gonna be easy, but I think just them being at home on a Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. game, I think they're gonna pull this one off just to get on the winning side.
All right, we're going to stay in that neck of the woods. Next up, we have Danvers at Beverly. Mukala, I'm going to start with you on this one. Pretty intriguing matchup between two programs that traditionally run the football, can manage the clock and play keep away and play good defense. Danvers, of course, has been a program that's been consistently good here in recent years. Beverly is starting to find its way back after a couple of tough years. How do you see this playing out?
Both of these teams are putting up a lot of points. Both of them are very explosive. Zach Fultz, the running back for Danvers, he had a really good game the previous week against I believe it was Reading. So these two teams are very familiar with each other playing in the Northeastern Conference. And then Danny Pierce and Beverly Panthers offense, they had another nail biter last week, putting up, I believe, 48 points or something like that. So they've been scoring in the 40s the last couple weeks. And the receiver, Floyd, for Beverly, he's a tough cover out there in the one-on-one. But I think this is going to be one of those old-fashioned shootouts, and I'm going to lean towards the home team in this one. I think Beverly is going to pull this one out. I think it might be another one of those 48-41 scores.
Yeah, two guys in this game have really emerged. Sophomore running back Zachary Fultz for Danvers. He's scored 3 touchdowns in 2 separate games this year. And then in consecutive games for Beverly, wide receiver Floyd White has had 4 touchdown receptions. So he has 8 touchdown receptions in their last 2 games. I agree that this one could be some fireworks in this one, high scoring game. Beverly is another one of those places that's a tough place to play. I like the way Danvers is playing right now. I think they're the better team, more well-rounded team. I think I'm going to go with the Falcons here, but this is a nice turnaround for Beverly. They've had a rough go of it the last few years, but it looks like they're trending towards being a playoff team again.
All right, next up, we're going to go to Central Mass again, where we have an intriguing matchup between two teams that have been really good the last couple of years, specifically the Hudson Hawks. They traveled to Clinton to take on a Clinton team that should be a player in Division 7. We talked about this in the preseason. We've talked about this the last couple of years, that this is one of those programs that, because Uxbridge has been so good, and there's been a couple of other programs in D7 that have been really good, this Clinton team is kind of flown under the radar, if you will. But this is an opportunity for them to get a big win against a Hudson team that, of course, is the defending Division 6 Super Bowl champs. Tyler, your thoughts on this one? How do you see this game going between two teams that are pretty evenly matched?
Yeah, well, Hudson, they lost to Shrewsbury, but other than that, they've been playing pretty well. I think people will remember their quarterback Logan Dome for his cameo in the state championship game last year, before Jake Attaway had his Willis Reed moment and played on one leg. This Hudson team's still good. Like, they graduated a lot, but they're still good. They're still going to be in the mix. Dome's playing well at quarterback. They've got some nice pieces. I think their defense is pretty good. Clinton is going to be in the mix in D7. They lost to another Division 7 hopeful, Northbridge, by 30 week 1. Since then, they've kind of righted the ship a little bit, played better football. They have a two-way guy, Tatum Casella, who's a good player. I saw him last year against Mashpee. I lean Hudson here. I think this is going to be a pretty competitive game, though. Pretty back and forth. 24-21, maybe 28-21, something like that. But I like the Hawks.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I was going back and forth with this one, but yeah, I think Hudson's going to come out with this one. I'm gonna go like 24-21 Hudson.
Yeah, I think it'll be a pretty close game, and I agree with both of you. I think it'll be a fun game, one of the better games of the weekend, and I think in a lot of ways it'll start to clear up the picture a little bit, if you will, in Division 6 and Division 7. Next up, we've got a battle of two undefeated teams, and Tyler, you're going to be at this game. Mashpee at Randolph. Both teams are 3-0. Can't say I'm surprised that Mashpee's 3-0. I mean, Matt Treveri's done a great job there with that program. Can't say that I'm surprised that Randolph is undefeated. Coach Marshall's done a tremendous job with that program. This should be a pretty good game and a good test for both teams heading into week 5 here. A game that I think both teams need from a scheduling standpoint.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think both of these teams, it's by far their most challenging game to this point. These two teams plus Cohasset will be in the mix for that South Shore Small. It's going to be a tight battle throughout. Mashpee, another team that lost a ton, but you just can't doubt this Mashpee program or doubt Coach Matt Treveri. Seems like they always have a running back waiting in the wings somehow, who takes over as a bell cow back for them. And they have that again with Daniel Alade. Brendan Andrade kind of complements him nicely as well. So this Mashpee team is able to run the ball like they have been with their most successful teams. Randolph, on the other hand, another team that can run the ball. They have multi-year starter Makai White, Abe Cornett in the backfield. Other guys like Zamari Bailey and Alan Nariska, a lot of guys that have played in a lot of big games over the last few years. This will be a fun game. It's one of the better small school matchups of the year. I think Randolph gets this one done. I think it's going to be a one-score game, maybe a 10-point game, something like that. But Makai White's one of the best running backs in the state, regardless of division. I think he'll be the difference maker here. He runs for 150 and a couple scores. Blue Devils win.
Yeah, it took the words right out of my mouth. Makai White, he's a playmaker. He's to do a lot for that team, especially on the offense. He's hard to bring down. He can break the big run. And the way Randolph offense works, they're very methodical with theirs. They're gonna take a while to get score, but they're gonna wear your defense out with the way they call plays with that rushing attack. So I'm gonna go with Randolph in this one. In a really close game.
All right, next up we go back north of the city, and this time we have Winchester at Wakefield. Of course, Winchester coming off an impressive win last week over Masconomet. Mukala, I'm going to start with you here. This is an intriguing matchup. Mm-hmm. Winchester is one of the best teams in Division II, but this Wakefield team is a pretty good program as well, a program that if you don't come to play and you're still on the high of last week's game, and then they scored 51 last week, Winchester, if you don't come to play, you could end up finding yourselves in a battle here. Is this a game that you could see being a battle between these two?
Yeah, I definitely could see this one being a battle, especially in Wakefield. That's one of the great environment over there to play in. But this Winchester offense, man, they score points fast. They score fast. They got some playmakers, but I think Wakefield also has some playmakers, and they also can score as well. So this might be one of those whoever has the ball last is gonna win this one. But I I'm gonna lean towards Winchester right now. I just think they're a little bit more explosive than Wakefield.
Great running back matchup in this one. Gianni DiPremio at Winchester and Jaden Fullerton at Wakefield. Both of these teams can score. I think it's going to be up and down. I think Winchester pulls away in the second half. In my opinion, right now, Winchester's the second best team in Division II after CM. I love how they're playing so far this year. They were the biggest riser in this week's New England Football Journal top 25, jumped from 25 to 15. So the red and black, they're absolutely for real, and I think they're going to be CM's top threat, or at least one of the top contenders to CM in Division II.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up because they've been really good the last 3 years, but it was kind of a crowded field at the top in Division II, and they just quite couldn't break through. They're going to have that opportunity this year to potentially break through and get to Gillette, where we assume will eventually run into CM, assuming they don't get tripped up along the way. I'm going to stay north of the city here, and Mukala, I'm going to come right back to you. Your thoughts on Burlington at Wilmington?
So Wilmington's Cam Gray had 3 special teams touchdowns last week against Arlington Catholic, 2 kick returns and a punt return for a touchdown in that win. And I don't know when's the last time you guys have seen someone do that in a game, but that was pretty impressive by that young man and by that Wilmington team going over there and getting that win. So I'm just gonna go with the momentum. I'm gonna take Wilmington in this one with the momentum.
I think both teams have played great defense to this point. I think Burlington's schedule has been more difficult. I think Burlington has more talent. Ryan Brooks, the Marist commit, is there for Burlington. This is a team that had success last year as well. It's good to see Wilmington kind of get back on the winning track here. They're a team that's trending towards a Division VI playoff berth, but Burlington's a good team. They've only given up 8 points total through the first 3 weeks. I think they'll give up a little bit more than that in this one, but I think you could see something like 24-12, 24-14. I like Burlington.
All righty. Next up, we head back to the southern part of the state, or south of the city, if you will. Cohasset visiting Veterans Memorial Stadium in Quincy to take on a very good North Quincy team. Ryan Craig's squad has been playing some good football again this season. I mean, I think a lot of people thought they had a really good senior class last year. I think a lot of people thought that they might take a step back. They haven't. They played pretty good. Cohasset, they're good every year. They're in the same mold as a Situate. Peter Afanasu, their longtime coach, program that has a lot of football lacrosse kids, good skill. They usually get good quarterback play. This will be a really good test for both teams here. Tyler, how do you think this game stacks up, and who do you think ultimately wins this game?
Yeah, I think just naturally, when you have a team that's it's like a D7 versus D3 matchup here. The team that's in the higher division, they typically have larger kids, so I think that's something that Cohasset will have to combat. Though I did hear Cohasset was bigger than they have been in past years, and we know about the skill. Max Monahan, Gus Green, Michael Wildfire. This team can really score. I think Uxbridge, Mashpee, Clinton, Northbridge get a lot of love in Division 7, but for some reason Cohasset hasn't gotten quite that level of love, but they certainly deserve it. They're one of the best small school programs in the state. I think the Skippers have a little bit too much firepower here. North Quincy will keep it close, and it will be a pretty tight affair throughout, but I think Cohasset's skill wins out, and the Skippers get a nice road win here.
Mukala, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think Cohasset is gonna get this one. I think they're just gonna be a little bit too much for North Quincy. As I'm watching the Red Sox just lose the game right now.
Has it gone final yet?
Yeah, it's final 4-3. 4-3 is the final.
Yeah, we knew the Yanks would bounce back. It comes down to tomorrow.
Well, they didn't send a guy home on the bases loaded. So, but I'm gonna go with Cohasset in this one. I just think they're the better team over North Quincy.
All right, now we're going to go over to the NEPSAC now, where we have a couple of intriguing games. First one is Milton Academy at St. Paul's. Milton Academy coming off a 51-26 loss to Tabor Academy, but we've said this on the show before. Tabor Academy is on paper the best team in New England, or if not, they're certainly one of the three best teams in New England. St. Paul's quietly doing their thing, one of the best programs in the ISL. This year, they've been one of the best programs in the NEPSAC the last couple of years. This Milton Academy team is talented on paper, but this St. Paul's team is really well coached, and they know how to get the most out of their guys. And I think this is another situation where St. Paul's might not necessarily have the talent that Milton Academy has, but St. Paul's can play a style that allows them to grind the game out and win it with their running game and their defense. Tyler, I'm going to start with you. Who do you like in this one? And does St. Paul get it done?
I think Milton Academy wants to go up and down the field. They're going to rely on their offense and Karan McNeil all year. St. Paul's can score a little bit too, but they're going to be a better defensive team, I think, throughout the year. That's more of their identity. St. Paul's is a team that, for some reason, I don't think they get quite the respect they deserve as a New England power, but I think they're certainly in that mix as one of the prep schools in the region. Quarterback Weber Marks is a good player too. So I think St. Paul's wins this one. I think this would be a pretty good game, contrasting styles, but St. Paul's wins this one 28-21.
Yeah, Milton Academy in that game against Tabor, I believe they had a different center. I think their starting center was injured in that game, so there was some errant snaps in that game. One of them cost them, got them a safety. So I'm not sure if their starting center will be back. But despite all that, these guys can move that ball. They could go up and down the field with the best of them. It was just they just ran into a team that was that was ready to play against Tabor Academy last Friday. That offense was moving, and they kept up with them for a little bit, but it was just too much firepower on Tabor's side. But this Milton Academy team, quarterback Karan McNeil, he was having himself a game as well. He threw over 244 yards in that one and 4 touchdowns, and I think he's going to have another game like that. I think this time they're going to get the win, but I'm concerned about it. I'm not sure if that starting center is going to be back or not, because that's going to be a key factor in their offense, because there were some times where they had a little momentum, but the errant snaps got them out of good field position.
Yeah, Tyler, you mentioned the quarterback matchup here. It's fantastic. McNeil, Marks, two guys who can really sling it, two of the best quarterbacks in New England. Should be a fun matchup. Another fun matchup in the NEPSAC is Choate Avon. That game is also this weekend. It's at Avon Old Farms. I got to see Avon last week in a 48-14 win over BBNN. Quarterback Matt Baer, we talk about the strength of the quarterback position in New England high school football, whether it be public, Catholic, or private. Matt Baer needs to be in that conversation, man. He was thoroughly impressive last week. In fact, we've got a nice little talking football feature with Matt tomorrow that'll be up on anyfootballjournal.com. But impressive young man. Threw 3 touchdown passes, threw for over 300 yards, rushed for 2 scores. Avon Old Farms was at another level. BBNN's a good program. We know Mike Willie can coach. We know he's had a lot of talent there through the years, and he gets a lot out of his talent. But John Hooley's team was at another level. And Choate's had their number in recent years. I think this is a year. Choate's not as good as they've been the last couple of years. I think Avon Old Farms is as good as they have been in the last couple of years. I think when you look at this matchup, I really like Avon Old Farms in this game. I think when Buck Craig in the backfield, you got Johnny Gingerua, the former West Springfield standout, and I mentioned Bear. Good offensive line. I think it's Choate's got some pieces as well. They're young at the skill positions, but I just think this Avon Old Farms team has too much. I think Choate makes this a game, but if you guys had to pick this game, how do you lean? I'm going Avon Old Farms.
I'm going to Avon Old Farms as well. I think they're right in that conversation as the second best team in New England after Tabor. So I think they get it done here as well.
Yeah, Avon. I'm going Avon Old Farms as well. What they did last week was very impressive. I think that'll continue.
Yeah, some really good matchups in Connecticut this weekend. One of the matchups we're watching is Staples at Darien. Both teams are undefeated going into this one. Darien, they lose quarterback Ben Rolap, but they have not skipped a beat offensively. They have been humming on offense. Staples coming off a 34-33 win over West Haven. Westy always plays them tough. I think this game is going to be an intriguing matchup. It's going to take place on Saturday at Darien. This is a signature game for Darien. The Blue Wave need this one. Andy Grant's squad has looked good so far, but they lost a lot from last year. I think there's a lot of question marks with this football team. I think they can answer a lot of those question marks with a win in this game. For Staples, they got two big ones coming up. You got Darien this weekend, Wilton next weekend. Those are going to be prove-it games for Matt Jackaloff's team. To me, I think this Darien team, I know that everybody and their mother is New Canaan's the number one team in Connecticut. They should be the favorite in Class L. But their Thanksgiving rival, whom, of course, New Canaan beat him in the Class L state title game last year, is showing people that they're good enough to get back there again. I think this Darien team needs this one to make a statement. I hate picking against Staples because they're such a good program, but I think there's something with this Darien team. I'm going Blue Wave here.
Yeah, I think New Canaan's the best team in the state, but Darien might have the best defense in the state. It's been lights out, or was lights out throughout September. I think that continues here. They knocked Staples off 14-10.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Darien as well. I think they're just they need to win, so I think they're gonna go 21-7.
Well, and again, I think it all comes down to Thanksgiving for them. But I think if they can win a game like this, and they play a pretty good schedule, a game like this would do a lot for them. This is a team that I think a lot of people thought, all right, they lost all the guys that they lost. Roach, Tom, Rolap, they're not going to be as good. Andy Grant and his staff have done a great job there. All right, next up, we head to the great state of Maine, and we have a big-time Class A showdown. Thornton Academy at Portland. I love the skill in this matchup. Mauricio Sunderland, Thornton Academy, Cordell Jones, arguably the most talented. He could be, if he's not the most talented skill player in the region, he's certainly one of the 5 best skill players in the region. The main commit. This is a fantastic matchup. Those two guys are good enough to take the game over for their team. A lot at stake here. I think we're going to find out a lot about Nick Cliché's Bulldogs, though, the next 2 weeks. They go Thornton Academy, Bonnie Eagle next week. This is going to be a fun matchup. We're going to have coverage of this game for you guys, by the way. But how do you guys see this one shaking out? Portland, of course, the defending Class A state champs. It's hard to pick against Cordell Jones and the Bulldogs.
Yeah, you said it right there. I think Cordell Jones is the difference in this one. He's the best player in the state of Maine. He's going to make more plays, and he'll help Portland pull this one out. Again, this is so we're going to talk about, as we wrap up here, we're going to talk about Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. I think the game of the year will be played this weekend in all of Maine, Rhode Island, and Vermont. 3 really good games across those states. So if you're a Maine, you're definitely going to want to check this one out. But Cordell Jones makes enough plays here, and the Bulldogs get it done.
I think when you have the best player on probably the best team, usually I'm gonna lean towards that team. So I think Portland is gonna come out with this one.
Yeah, Thornton Academy's only loss is to a 4-0 Bedford team in New Hampshire a couple weeks ago. Thornton Academy's still the standard in Class A. They have been through the years. I mean, they've won, 35 state titles. But I think it's one of those things where this Portland team has been so good the last couple of years, and Bonnie Eagles emerging all of a sudden. Now the Scots are going to be a factor as well. So should be a lot of fun, but this should be a great matchup. We're going to go south to New Hampshire. Next up, we have 3-1 Exeter coming off a tough loss last week to Winnicott. They take on Bedford. The Bulldogs, as I mentioned, are 4-0. And again, going into the season, Pinkerton, your defending Division I champ. I think a lot of people thought Brian Riley's squad, of course, coming off a big 24-10 win last week against Londonderry. I think a lot of people thought, all right, going into the season, they have enough back. They should be the favorites. We can't forget about how good this Bedford program has been the last 3 years, man. Coach Matthews has done a great job with this program. Exeter's had a nice season up until this point, but it is hard to pick against these Bulldogs, man. They play great defense. They get timely offense, and if they end up in a shootout, they have the skill where they can win that kind of game. this could end up being a little bit on the higher scoring side for Bedford, but it's hard to pick against them in this one.
It is. I think Bedford's still the class in New Hampshire. I know they didn't get them. They didn't get the three-peat done last year, but I still think it's them, and then in some order, Londonderry, Pinkerton. Probably this year, Pinkerton, Londonderry. Some really good football in New Hampshire, but I still think Bedford's the class, and they get the job done here as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Bedford. I think they're just a better team overall. I think they're gonna come out with this one.
Yeah, and of course, when we talk about football in New Hampshire, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Pelham and Sohagen as well, two really good programs in their own right that are going to be playing in big games here in the coming weeks as well. So, but this should be a really good matchup. And of course, in Rhode Island, you've got the game. This is the biggest high school game of the year every year, unless they end up meeting in the state title game. You have Hendricken and LaSalle. Bishop Hendricken visiting LaSalle this year. Both of these teams are limping in, though, coming off losses. LaSalle last week losing to St. John's Prep, and, of course, Hendricken losing to Central Catholic. They don't know – they're not coming in with the usual bravado, if you will, that they have and their pristine records. But this is a rivalry game, and these two are the standard in Rhode Island. They have been for a long time. And regardless of what their records are, it is the high school game in Rhode Island. It is the rivalry. It's the big one. This Hendricken team is hard to figure out because they lose to Killingly in a shootout, and Killingly is one of the three best teams in Connecticut. They lose to Killingly in a shootout, then turn around and beat Cumberland 34-0, then lose a heartbreaker to Central Catholic last week, a game in which they jumped on them early and controlled early on, ended up losing 20-19. I think this is going to be a close game. I think Dan Copen has LaSalle playing well. I think their schedule has caught up to them the last couple of weeks. That loss to North Kingstown was a tough one. They lost 21-20. I think this is going to be a close game, but I think, and there's a lot of history with Copen there because he did coach at Hendricken under Keith Croft. I think ultimately, though, I lean Hendricken here. This is a game that Keith Croft's squad finds a way to win. I think this is no different this year. North Kingstown could potentially play spoiler down the road, but I have a feeling we could see these two again later on in the season. But as far as this game goes, I lean Hendricken here. I'm going with the Hawks.
Yeah, and I love the way these teams schedule. Their hand, I think, is sort of forced in a way where they have to go out of state and play teams. We've seen them both go to Massachusetts, both go to New Hampshire. Go to New York and play powers from out of state. So they beef up the schedule. Of course, Hendricken played Killingly and lost that one. So these teams they're definitely battle tested, and they're definitely the class of Rhode Island every year. I think St. Ray's is sort of in that mix this year, though. St. Ray's is playing good football. But again, this is always the game of the year. I think most football fans in New England just expect to see this game played twice a year. Hendricken wins this one. They've got more talent. Jeremy Seedy, one of the best running backs in the region. I like Hendricken here. I think they pull it out by 10 points.
Hendricken, they're going to look back at that Central Catholic game. They let that one get away, but they did play well, though. Isaiah Brito, the quarterback, he played really well. He had 3 touchdowns, about 190 yards passing. The running game really, they couldn't get much on the running game. I believe CD, John, you said he was coming back from an injury. So he had some good moments, but you could still see it was him just coming back from injury, trying to get back in the groove of things. And Central's defense really didn't give him much in that running game. And I know LaSalle, they're going to want to bounce back after allowing 50 points, allowing St. John's Prep to score 50 points this past weekend. So both teams coming off losses, they're trying to get the win. But I think Hendricken is going to get this one. I feel like they played winning football until a couple minutes of that game against Central Catholic. And I think if they could get CD going to complement that passing game, they'll have a chance. But they get to contain LaSalle, they got to make sure they key on Antonio Bearden. He's having a really good season for them. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception last week. So he's going to be a guy for Hendrickens' defense to key on. They played really well, though, throughout the game against Central Catholic. So, but I'm going to go with Bishop Hendricken in this one.
All right, finally, we go up to the great state of Vermont. We got a big one between two teams that are both undefeated. Both are 4-0. Hartford at Middlebury, a lot at stake here in this SVL. Both teams are technically tied at the top of the SVL. The winner here has a clear path to potentially getting to a state title game. This should be a good one. I mean, both of these teams have been impressive thus far. Hurricanes have had their moments, but by and large, they're good enough to go into Middlebury and win this one. This should be a fun one. It could also be a high-scoring affair.
Yeah, it could be. I think this year I didn't really know what to expect from Vermont. I wasn't sure how CVU would be after winning or being the best team
They
in the state
lost so
last year.
much, and then Ron Fleming retired, and they're not the same program. Orion Yates left.
Yeah. So I mean, it was tough, or it's been a tough go for them. But then it sort of looked like Rutland was the best team, and then it looked like Middlebury, and now it looks like I think Hartford's the best team. Hartford's been a wagon. The defense is great. They're dominating. They've won every game by at least 4 scores. I like the Hurricanes here. I think they're the top team of Vermont.
I'm just gonna agree with Tyler because I don't know much about both of these teams. I'll go with Tyler's pick.
Yeah, and Burton and St. Johnsbury are in the mix as well. So I think again it's one of those things where this is a big one because I think one thing that's important to remember about Vermont is their season is shorter. So the winner of this one, like I said, has a clear path to potentially getting to a state title game. All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the High School Preview Show. Gentlemen, I want to say thank you once again for taking the time to do this. We greatly appreciate it. We greatly appreciate the knowledge as always. And hey, listen, don't start your high school football week, whether it be in Massachusetts. I know that we majority cover the Massachusetts games, but we get into some of the top games in the region as well. Don't start your high school football week without checking out the High School Preview Show. Check it out on all of our pages. You can find it. It'll be there going into the weekend. So make sure you check it out and get yourself ready for the upcoming week in New England high school football. That'll do it for this week's episode of the High School Preview Show. For Tyler Amaral and Mukala Kabongo, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you I should say, next week. Until then, get out there and enjoy the games. And as always, stay safe. Peace.